I wanted to introduce you as Michael from Niantic, but I guess that's not technically true. Starting pretty soon. So I guess, can you just introduce yourself as far as like your title and what you do with Pokemon Go? And
Sure. Yeah. I guess. Hi. I'm Michael. We've known each other for a while now at this point, but I am Pokemon Go's senior product director. And yeah, I've been on the team for 8 years. It's kind of weird to think about. It's a long time. And I started off, purely on the live event side, creating things like Go Fest, Community Day, things of that nature. And then over the course of my 8 years on the game, I've been able to, take on additional responsibilities and whatnot. And so now my team pretty much, is focused on creating everything that we call the live game. So that includes any events and whatnot that take place in the game. Like right now, there's the DMAX Chansey that just came out. Any big live events like Go Fest and whatnot. And then the game design team also reports up through me. And so pretty much the design for lots of the different major features and everything as well currently. So yeah.
A lot on your plate.
It is, but it's been fun.
Cool. I'm glad. I guess I should have said this earlier, but obviously we're here today to talk about the sale of Pokemon Go from Niantic to Scopely. It's something that's everyone in the community is talking about, wants to know about. So Michael and the team reached out to ask if we could talk about this and just kind of hopefully share some information with the community, answer some questions. I took a lot of questions from you all, so hopefully we'll get to as many of those today as we can. So I guess I'll just start by asking, like, for a little bit more detail, clarity on the sale, the transaction, the what, the why. I guess, can we start with why? Like, what was the
sounds
motivation
good.
behind it?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, definitely appreciative of you setting up time to chat about this. The main reason we reached out was, we saw lots of concern or, anxiety from players when this was announced. And at least from a lot of the stuff that I was reading, people were concerned about. I really feel like there's actually, those specific concerns are not anything that people should be worried about. And I wanted an opportunity to chat about it and hopefully assuage some of those concerns. But yeah, to answer the question of why, this is honestly something that's been in the works for a little while now, I would say. As you and many other players in the community, I'm sure, could tell even from an outsider's perspective, Niantic's always had a little bit of a dual personality, I would say. We've had one huge chunk of the team that was very focused on creating this mapping platform. For a while it was mostly focused on augmented reality mapping. Now we've shifted a little bit more towards creating more of an AI geospatial map of the world. And that's been really critical for us ever since the inception of Niantic. And then we had another group that's focused on games, right? Creating Pokemon Go, Monster Hunter Now, Pikmin Bloom. And we really wanted that to work for as best as we could, and there was lots of overlap in terms of synergies, right? Of Pokemon Go and all the games that we make are about exploring the world, and so that naturally made sense to build on this platform that was all about servicing those types of applications. But I will say, it did lead to sometimes either competing priorities or, I guess more regularly, too many priorities for the team to really focus on and lean into. And so this type of a acquisition or opportunity is really meant to help give both groups the focus and attention that they deserve, right? The platform team really wants to be able to have a company and a group that is 100% fully focused on making that platform as amazing as it can be. And the game teams just want to really be in a group that is 100% focused on making the games as amazing as they can be. But yeah, you know, I'll be honest, it's definitely a little bit bittersweet for me, right? Because like I mentioned, I've been at at Niantic for so long. I really love John Hankey, our CEO. I think he's been one of the more inspirational leaders that I've had the fortune of working with. But I do think that, you know, in terms of what's good for Pokemon Go, this is absolutely one of the best things that could be happening to the game.
Okay, good. I mean, I definitely want to share the optimism.
Yeah.
I feel, like you said, in the past, throughout Pokemon Go's history, there have definitely been times where I've noticed those competing priorities. There's been features in the game that feel more like they were designed to collect geospatial data than to actually be like a fun game feature. Like
totally.
Pokestop scanning comes to mind for me like that. As a player, I didn't care.
Yeah.
Like that didn't feel like it was for me. That didn't feel like it added anything to the game experience for me. So with Niantic no longer, I guess, the spatial AR team at Niantic no longer kind of being behind the wheel in a sense, how do you see your priorities as the Pokemon Go team changing?
Yeah, great question. So one thing I want to be clear about is, in terms of the mission of Pokemon Go and, you know, lots of other Niantic games, we really don't want that part to change, right? We really still think it's so important, and it's what really sets us apart from all other games in the market, that our games are intended to get people outside and exploring the world. But like you mentioned, you know, definitely less of an emphasis on scanning and things of that nature. Although, of course, we still want to continue adding more Pokestops and gyms and whatnot to the game over time. That's sort of the lifeblood of what makes the game feel so closely tied to the real world that we all live in. But yeah, I would say definitely more of a focus on how do we build this community and make it as, you know, large as possible, and bring as many people in and have everybody be excited about the game and the future of the game as we can. In talking with the folks at Scopely for the past couple of months, something that's really resonated with me is there were two things that they continuously bring up that they've been so excited about with Pokemon Go, and that is just the sheer enthusiasm that they see in our player base. They've told me multiple times that they don't think that there's any game out in the market that has as rabid of fans as Pokemon Go does. And then the other thing that they've been so, you know, excited about is our live events. Because again, that's not something that they see any other game doing in the market. And so for me, when it comes to what are the things we want to prioritize moving forward for the game, I think, you know, we're definitely going to be leaning into ways to expand the community, and also see if there are ways that we can make our events even bigger and better than before.
Okay, cool. So I guess a lot of that emphasis on exploration, you know, getting outside, getting into the real world, that's coming with you, the Pokemon Go team.
Yes.
And that's, I mean, I've known you for what, seven years probably, at least. I can definitely see like how that's a priority for you, for Ed, for just everyone that I've met personally that works on Pokemon Go. Yeah, so I'm definitely excited to see that. I think the community, like I've said so many times, the community really makes this game.
Yeah.
It's completely unique for a game, not something I've ever experienced with any other game, especially a mobile game.
Yeah.
I do want to come back to Scopely and their excitement and priorities, because I want to say have a healthy amount of skepticism.
Yep.
And I think we probably all should, just in general in life. But to go back to kind of the location-based AR stuff, you mentioned continuing to add Pokestops, POIs. Is Wayfarer going to Scopely?
Yes.
As part of, okay.
Yep.
So that whole program is going to continue kind of, I guess, as usual?
As usual.
Continue to submit Pokestops and...
Totally. Yeah, I mean, we actually I guess to give a little bit of a peek behind the curtains, as you can imagine, over the past few days at Niantic, we've had meetings with our executive team, the Scopely executive team, about what this transition is going to be like. And the word that has continued to be repeated from both groups is continuity. It's super critical for us that everything that goes into making our games as amazing as they are continues forward, and that there's no gap in the sort of the needs that each of the different departments have to make that happen. So that includes Wayfarer, and it includes all of the different platform or like data security aspects or player support pieces that are needed to run Pokemon Go and Monster Hunter Now and Pikmin Bloom. So all of that's coming along with Scopely.
Okay. As far as who's staying at Niantic and who's coming with Pokemon Go, like how far up the chain does this go? Is Ed kind of at the top?
Ed's at the top.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So, but to be fair, Ed has been leading Pokemon Go for the past couple of years now. He's my boss, if you didn't know that. So yeah, he's going to be leading the charge, and he will be sort of reporting directly to the one of the Scopely co-CEOs, essentially.
Okay.
But yeah, he'll be leading the entire organization just as he has been for the past 2 years and change.
Okay. I guess as a follow-up, I'm curious to know how involved the Niantic kind of executive suite has been involved in Pokemon Go. In the day-to-day, I'm sure John Hankey's not.
No.
The sense that I've gotten in my few interactions with him is that he's not at all been involved in the day-to-day of Pokemon Go operations, the in-game events, maybe to some extent the big live events. But I guess how do you see Scopely being the same, different as far as their involvement in guiding the direction of the game, the decisions that the design team is making?
Yeah. So I think this is one of the big, threads that I've seen online in the wake of this announcement are people wondering that exact question. And to be honest with you, that's actually one of the things that had me feeling as comfortable as I am about this acquisition. The way Scopely actually manages their portfolio of games is they empower all of their teams to make all the decisions that they feel is best for that specific product. So that's the plan for Pokemon Go, Monster Hunter Now, Pikmin Bloom. Our teams are still going to have full, autonomy and decision making within the games that we're building. And I'm really excited about that. I think being able to say like, hey, this is the roadmap for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and genuinely have confidence in the things that we're making and the impact that it can have on our players, either like quality of life or new exciting things. It's something that I'm pretty confident we'll be able to say within Scopely.
Okay. To get back to my skepticism now.
And I gotta say too, I think it's totally reasonable to have skepticism. This type of thing can cause lots of, confusion, fears, and I think that's super natural. And to an extent, there's probably nothing that I can even say today that will, completely remove any skepticism that people have. So the big takeaway is wait and see, right?
Yeah.
But at least I thought it would be important to come and share today what my experience has been in the months that I've had to interact with Scopely and why I'm at least more on the optimistic side here. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, the point that I was going to try to get to is I trust you, I trust Ed, I trust Brandon, Kestrel, like everyone that I've met that works on Pokemon Go. I mean, I trust them as people. I believe that you all care about the game and really want to make the best game possible, the best player experience possible. But I feel like we're just a little too deep in capitalism for me to have that same amount of trust for a company, for a business, especially one whose motive at the end of the day is profit. It's no secret that Scopely is owned by Savvy, which is a division of the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund.
Yeah.
A fund whose purpose is to increase revenue, diversify the Saudis' assets.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I would assume that to some extent, financial profit is a motive for the acquisition of Pokemon Go. How do you see that playing out for Scopely? How do you see the future of monetization in the game? I mean, I'm sure one of your goals has to be to make money for the company.
Oh, of course.
That owns Pokemon Go. Yeah, how do you see that playing out?
Yeah. Let me Uno reversal that for you. So I think you're absolutely right. There's no way that Scopely or anybody would acquire a company, a business like Pokemon Go unless there was a legitimate path, or they saw that that was something that could be financially viable for them. Scopely already sees Pokemon Go as something that is very, very, financially viable as it is currently being operated. And some of the things that they've shared with us is they've been really intrigued and, impressed by the way that we monetize relative to other games in the space, not even just their own portfolio, but just generally speaking. And it's something that I've always been incredibly proud of is the fact that Pokemon Go is, truly free to play, right? Yes, I know that players will be quick to call out. We've added more tickets, to the game recently and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, we've always tried to create an experience where those things are optional for people who are interested in, spending money, but it's not required in order to really enjoy the game. And so we really do have a winning formula here that's unique in the industry. And what we see is we actually have more people in our game that are willing to spend a little bit of money in Pokemon Go versus how lots of other games operate where there's actually less of the total player base, but spending more money essentially, right? And that's something that we want to continue to maintain forever. And it's been a winning strategy for us, and hopefully that's something that our players appreciate as well. And again, in my conversations with the folks at Scopely, there's been no desire whatsoever to change that for the game. It'd be a different case if we weren't, profitable or anything like that, and we probably wouldn't even be in this position, to be acquired. But yeah, it's already a very successful business, and by Scopely's own admission, they'd be fools to try to change any of that. But yeah, and I really do want to reinforce the notion that every single game in the portfolio within Scopely is fully autonomous and operated by the teams that build those games. And so, you can actually look at all the different products that they have in their portfolio and see that their, monetization strategies, as an example, it's not uniform across every single one. It differs based on what those games' needs are. And I think the other thing that I'll say on that front that you touched on a little bit with Savvy is that actually, so we had a couple paths forward in, at this, crossroads in Niantic's and Pokemon Go's future. And we actually really feel like this path is the best one for Pokemon Go because we are going to a privately held company that doesn't have things like, the pressures of quarterly profits that you might have if we instead IPO'd and, we're subject to public pressures to, get shareholder profits and things like that. So instead, what Scopely has always been focused on is building super long-term, enduring franchises that, sort of like pay dividends in the long run, essentially. They are not interested in creating something that's gonna, spike a bunch of short-term revenue and sacrifice the longevity of the product. And so I really am excited about that type of an organization and environment where they want to invest in what's best for the long-term health of the game and not short-term gains. And I guess to give a specific example on this that the Scopely team has shared with us, it took them 7 years to launch Monopoly Go, which is kind of unheard of, especially in the mobile game space. And they restarted that project 3 times in the, that development cycle. And so to me, that really speaks to their willingness to do the right thing in order to create an experience that's as fun and exciting as possible, and something that they have confidence is going to stand the test of time. I think that really lines up very well with our vision for Pokemon Go being a forever game, as you've probably heard me say multiple times at this point. So I have all reason to be excited about the future in that respect.
I think a lot of people are probably looking at it from like a worst case scenario perspective, where pop-up ads start happening in Pokemon Go.
That will never happen. I'm saying that right here now.
I believe you. I don't believe companies.
Sure.
I believe you in this moment right now.
Yeah.
I guess there is a best case scenario where I guess Scopely learns something from Pokemon Go and takes that and applies that to other games. Scrabble Go Fest, Monopoly Go Fest 2026 maybe.
For sure, and that's part of, again, when I think about the things that I'm excited about, they've constantly talked about how they approach their portfolio of games, and it's one of constant learning and iteration across different games, where you find a learning in one area and that makes sense for this other game, and so you can share that with each other. We've never had that at Niantic, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I'm really excited for, and also something that Scopely's expressed excitement for in bringing us into the mix, is what can they learn from how we build communities and our big events and things of that nature.
So one thing that I've been curious about from the start is how involved is TPC? How involved is the Pokemon Company in this deal?
Yeah, so the Pokemon Company's part of our board of directors. They were one of the earliest, if not the earliest investor in Niantic as we spun out of Google. So no deal like this can happen without TPC's support. And in terms of how involved they are in Pokemon Go, I have, way more regular meetings with them than my wife would probably, be excited to admit. It goes on, late into the night because they're out in, Japan, obviously. So we work very closely with them day to day on literally everything that happens in the game. There's nothing that goes live to players that we don't agree on and get aligned on with the Pokemon Company.
Okay. So that'll continue.
That'll continue.
I have always wanted to ask, how involved is the Pokemon Company in the day-to-day? In the way that, John Hankey, not necessarily super involved. The TPC team, how involved are they in event planning and what gets to be released in Pokemon Go?
Yeah, so the Pokemon Company owns the Pokemon IP, right? And, we license that from them. Which means that ultimately, especially when it comes to anything that you might say is brand related, they have sort of approval rights on all those things. Mm-hmm. So literally everything that we're building, whether it's a new feature or a live op or all the things that we try to do at GoFest, we work hand in hand with TPC on building those experiences. In terms of how that actually operates, all of the early concepts start within our team, but after those early concepts are created, we mold those over time in collaboration with TPC. And a lot of times they have great insights that make our ideas a lot better than they originally were. And I think we also balance each other out very well as a company that might have more of a history of being a little bit more conservative and whatnot versus, a company like ours that's always really trying to push the boundary, maybe a little too aggressively. So we usually find a nice middle ground that I think, players have had the benefit of enjoying.
Yeah. The question I wanted to ask earlier was, with Wayfarer moving to Scopely,
Yep.
along with Pokemon Go, is Niantic still going to be getting geospatial data from the Pokemon Go team? Are they still using the data that we as players create to build their platform?
Yes. So as a part of this agreement, anything that players, still scan or submit through the Wayfarer program or otherwise, that data does still get shared back to the Niantic Spatial organization, but all of that data is still fully encrypted and protected in all the ways that we have been doing it up until now, which is honestly best in class. Contrary to popular belief, we don't store any player data beyond what's needed to actually operate the game. All data is fully anonymized, and everything is stored on US-based servers. And again, in sort of like accordance to all of the regulatory laws and whatnot to ensure that your data is as safe and sound as possible. So none of that's changing. Yeah.
I think that was a concern that a lot of people had with, obviously, moving up the chain, getting to the Saudi PIF.
Yeah.
So yeah, just walk me through one more time with the data. That's all going to stay.
That all stays in the U.S. It never leaves the country, and it's not something that ever gets shared up with Savvy or otherwise. In fact, Scopely itself is sort of like wholly owned and operated, sort of independently as well. So there's like enough layers of separation there that you can trust that all of your data stays within the the servers in the United States. And also, like I mentioned, we actually scrub all that data and get rid of it after it's no longer needed to run the game.
Okay. As far as the data that we as players have provided in terms of mapping the world, which is one of Niantic's goals, I guess, there were some things about maybe building a map for war robots to use, some
Interesting. I hadn't seen that one.
Okay, well, I've definitely heard that one. We don't have to talk about necessarily what the mapping and the data is going to be used for, but I do want to know from you personally, are you, as far as are you comfortable with what Niantic uses our player data to build? Yeah,
I'm fully comfortable with that. I mean, to me, it all goes back to, like you said, going up the layers, right? John Hankey at the head of that organization. I've always found John to be almost like too much of a Boy Scout. I still remember when I was interviewing at Niantic, I did a bunch of research on who he is as a CEO, and it was really just like, wow, this is about as clean of a bill as you can get on any executive at any company. And since working at Niantic for the past 8 years, I've just seen him show up that way day to day and make what I would consider to be the ethically right decision, even sometimes at the expense of what could be a better business outcome for us. So yeah, there's frankly nobody that I would trust more with that type of data than someone like John.
Okay. I believe you to an extent.
Skepticism's fine, like I said. I'm here to share what my experience has been.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I guess to continue a little bit with Niantic and John, I am curious to know if there have been any features that you've released in the game that you necessarily haven't been super excited about, that maybe came from a little bit of that outside pressure from the AR team pressure.
I mean, I think the clear and obvious one is the one that you already mentioned, which is the power up Pokestops feature. I do think that may have been a little bit more shoehorned than I would have personally wanted to do. But again, I also say that as someone who really does believe in the importance and value of creating this type of a platform, and the fact that has the potential to better the world. And if you think about it, Pokemon Go only exists because of these types of, leaps forward in technological advancements that wouldn't be possible without the Ingress community, first seeding a lot of that information. And so, as a player, I can say, not a fan of power-up Pokestops. I've, scanned probably less than a handful in my, total time playing this game. But I can also still set that aside and understand why that is important for a separate initiative within the company. But again, that's the type of thing where we would not have those competing priorities within an organization like Scopely, where they're fully focused on just making the game as amazing as possible.
I'm excited to hear that. I'm glad to hear that, because when I first talked about the news, I kind of outlined a few different ways that a company can kind of make a product or more profitable by cutting costs, which obviously we don't want to see.
And we're not doing.
Okay. Yeah. By increasing prices, heavier monetization, by acquiring new players, which I know is a goal, has always been a goal.
Yep.
But there is kind of a fourth one that I didn't really consider because, again, skepticism, which is just increasing the quality of the product.
Yeah.
And that in turn helps acquire new players. It increases session time, which is I know a huge KPI in the tech world. But I think hearing this, especially hearing that there isn't going to be so much pressure from the Niantic side to have these sort of half-baked, not that interesting game features, I do feel that, I guess, increasing the quality of the product is an option now. I'll put that on the table as a fourth option.
And, to be totally fair too, right? That is the fourth option, but it feeds into the third one, which is acquiring new users. I think sometimes people think about acquiring new users as, they're going to spend a bunch more money on ads, and we've seen mobile ads that are maybe not authentic to the game or anything like that. But our mix of organic player acquisition relative to what is called in the industry paid acquisition is also gold standard. We rely very heavily on word of mouth to grow Pokemon Go, and we already have such a strong engine for that. Imagine if we fed more fuel to that fire and created an even better experience that people are jazzed to tell their friends and family about. That's the way that we envision growing this game, making it more profitable. It's not by adding, putting more ads in there or increasing the price of, a Pokeball or whatever. It's all about growing our total player base. And like I mentioned earlier, we already have a unique strategy in Pokemon Go where, a higher percentage of our players are excited to, spend a little bit of money. And we don't need to go what's, considered whale hunting in the industry, right? So you grow the total player population, and therefore the total financial benefit comes with that.
Yeah, it's comforting. I do feel optimistic about that. I am curious because I know you come from a sort of a competitive Pokemon background. I know you're into GBL.
Yeah.
Will there be any increased focus on features like that, which didn't necessarily encourage exploration or align with the sort of go outside values of Niantic and of the Pokemon Go team? Will there be any changes to the amount of time and effort that you can put into GBL specifically, and then other features like that?
Yeah. I don't have anything that I can announce right now, in terms of our roadmap and whatnot. But I will say that for super competitive system like PvP and GBL and whatnot, the stability of that feature is so fundamentally important, and it's something where literally a half second of lag or inconsistency can change the outcome of a battle. And so, irrespective of where we land with Scopely and whatnot, that's something that the team is fully committed to adjusting, and behind the scenes we've been tinkering away at and investing in that system to make it more stable and consistent. And it's been a little bit of a pet project of mine, because as you mentioned, like that's where I spend a lot of my time in not just Pokemon Go, but all Pokemon games, is the battling aspect. And I watch every single regional that Play Pokemon puts on, and I love attending those events as well. I want to make sure that our super dedicated players have a great experience when it comes to anything PvP. So, again, that's not to say that this is different because of the Scopely acquisition, but that's the type of decision that we want to keep making as a team that's going to continue to be empowered, within Scopely.
Can you say anything about how maybe funding for the team is going to change? Because my perspective from the outside has always been that it feels like a lot of the profit from Pokemon Go was going towards a lot of other Niantic projects and not necessarily coming back into the game 100%.
Yeah.
Is that something that could change? Like, will there be more funding? Will there be more opportunities for hiring, for increasing the amount of resources available to teams?
Yeah, that's a really great, question, and a good reason why I was hoping to have a conversation with someone like you, because I feel like you tend to have that type of insight that most people don't really think about. But I would say absolutely yes. This will be, we're going to be asked to manage the overall P&L of Pokemon Go. And that means that we get to make the decisions on, hey, can we afford to invest more in this area, and what's the growth that we expect to come out of that? So, I think that's for better or for worse, right? If it's like, oh, actually, the game is tanking, we need to figure that out. What are we going to do to, make sure that this stays within the healthy margins that it needs to be. But so far, in the almost 9 years that the game's been out, it's been a very healthy and profitable product for us. And now, as our own team, we'll be able to, I think anyways, continue to invest more heavily there. And that's one way that we see to making the game even better than before.
Okay, I have a question that has come up. I'm sure I probably can guess the answer, but a lot of people have hoped maybe that remote raids would come back in a truly unlimited form as a great way to make a ton of money for Pokemon Go and for Scopely. What are the odds of the remote raid pass limit being lifted?
I figured you might ask a question like that,
It's for them. It's not for me, it's for them.
That's probably one of the more common things I see online as well. Definitely nothing to announce at this time on that front. But what I will emphasize is, and I hope players can also appreciate this, even if it might come with, some frustration on their side as well. But like I said, we do want to bring that mission forward with us at Scopely, of getting people outside and exploring, and fostering these in-person social experiences. And so if you're thinking that Pokemon Go moving to Scopely all of a sudden means that you're going to be able to get the full Pokemon Go experience from your couch, that's not going to happen, and that's not what makes this game special. But yeah, I don't have any specifics to share on the remote raiding piece, but I just wanted to, emphasize that the parts in my mind that keep this game and this community as vibrant and special as possible are the things that we want to lean into and, make even better. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of relates to the last two questions in terms of building community, bringing people together. You've always been part of the live events team. How do you see that changing or improving as far as funding maybe for live events? I know that you've said the Go Fests this summer are going on as normal.
Yep.
Do you think we'll see an increase in live events, a change to live events in any way? What do you have for us on the future of that?
Yeah, I think to be determined on specifics there, but at the base level, they're not gonna, go down by even a millimeter. So I would say you can expect either the exact same amount of investment or more. And if I were a betting man, I would say, even more investment there, because like I mentioned, that's one of the two areas that Scopely has told me time and time again that they've been really excited about with Pokemon Go. It's like how incredible of a community we've been able to build, and also how fascinating our live events have been as sort of this, almost industry unicorn.
I mean, I think we've kind of gone over this, but maybe you can just kind of summarize what are Scopely's short-term and long-term goals with Pokemon Go?
Yeah, I think short-term, it's all about continuity again. Like we're on a roll. The game, you always see players putting their own theories and hypotheses out there. That like, oh my gosh, like Pokemon Go is going downhill or whatever, right? By the numbers, we've been growing over the past several years. And, it's something that we want to continue that like snowball, especially building into next year, 2026, which is going to be our 10-year anniversary. So that's going to be a huge moment and a huge opportunity for us. And short term, Scopely just wants to make sure that we have all the continuity needed, that we're going to minimize thrash on the team. As you can imagine, even with the whole team coming along, there's going to be lots of distractions and, things that could make it more difficult to get your regular day-to-day work done, right? It's like we're literally changing, access to documents and, moving over to Scopely's, I don't even know if they use Slack actually, like, how are we gonna manage like those types of day-to-day things? So short-term really focused on all of the continuity there to make sure that the team can continue to execute on our plans without skipping a beat. But long-term, it's as I mentioned, it's all about growing the player base, growing the community. That's Scopely's strategy, is to have a portfolio of what they call extremely durable games. And I think, if you actually look at the existing Scopely portfolio of games, what I find really interesting is so many of those are games that have been thriving for many, many years themselves. And that's rare, There are lots of games, especially in the mobile space, that can be a blip and then, a couple years later they disappear. That's not the case with many of Scopely's products in their portfolio, and I'm stoked to add Pokemon Go to that list of these long-term, enduring franchises.
Yeah, I hope so. Forever game.
Yeah.
Okay, here's an interesting one. I don't know if you can answer it, but
sure.
I'm going to ask anyway. Are there any features that you or the design team as a whole has wanted to implement that maybe Niantic has shut down? Are you don't have to get into specifics, but have there been any ideas that you've had that didn't pan out under Niantic that you feel like you could maybe take another stab at under new management?
Yeah, I mean, we actually have a huge backlog of ideas that have, not hit the very front of our prioritization list for one reason or another. I think an exercise that we'll definitely be doing over the coming months and years is looking at that backlog, seeing if there's anything that now makes sense. Also thinking of new ideas that, we'd never even, considered in the past to see if that would, be what would be most impactful for the game. But again, it will all be about like, how are we gonna drive impact for Pokemon Go? And I'm really excited for that level of focus for our team.
Okay, I've got a good one, really good one. And I'm sorry that I didn't ask this earlier. Will there be any changes to communication? The way that the Pokemon Go team communicates with the community, the way that the community is able to communicate with the Pokemon Go team? Will we get more clear messaging about things that are going on in the game? Will we have better avenues of addressing concerns? I know that, we as content creators get to share feedback. I don't always feel like that feedback has gone anywhere beyond the message that I sent.
Yeah.
So will that change at all?
Yeah, so the current open channels of communication that we have to creators, to community ambassadors, and then also, the feedback that we get through social media or through our help center, none of that is changing. I will say that, as Scopely has mentioned multiple times, that community is so important to them. I would have to imagine that if anything, we want to try to, expand on the different programs that we have to officially support community members. But it's a little too early to tell what specifically is going to happen there. But at the very least, there's going to be no reduction in those lines of communication. So you can think of it as like, if there is anything, it's potential for upside.
Cool. I know there's been a lot of expansion with the community ambassador program over the last couple of years, which has been amazing.
Yeah.
Is Campfire also?
Yes.
Campfire's going to?
Campfire's coming as well.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been such a great program, and shout out to Kestrel especially for building that one up, because John Hankey put a pretty crazy goal for Kestrel to try to hit on that program, and they were able to exceed it. So, yeah, and I think that just speaks to the demand out there from our players and our communities to actually have these more organized, in-person, experiences. And yeah, we want to continue to lean in there and invest even more.
Cool. I really do feel a bit of a recovery, post-pandemic. There's obviously a huge dip in community, but I feel like with the emphasis and the priority that's been put on building local community, you can really see it coming back in a lot of places, and it's incredible. I mean, I think that's what carries the game.
Me too. I genuinely believe that too.
Yeah, it's been a really valuable resource. I mean, obviously for everyone, but for me as well. Just being able to find communities when I travel. Yeah. It's just a really, really nice thing to have. So I'm glad that Campfire's coming along. I'm glad that there's going to be, the continued push to help rebuild communities. Because, I mean, if you look at the healthiest Pokemon Go communities, there's always some kind of central leadership. There's someone or some group of people who are really invested in bringing people together. Yeah. And I mean, that's what the game's always been about. Yeah. And that's what it's best at, I think.
I think so too.
Awesome. I think we've covered just about everything. There's a lot of questions here, but I think we've done okay.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers questions that everyone has out there. If people want to comment with stuff, I'm sure. Could I follow up with you for?
Oh, for sure, yeah. And I'm a serial lurker on the internets. So even if you don't follow up with me, I will be reading the comments and
good luck.
Yeah. Well, this role, I think you need to come with a thicker set of skin than others. But it's it's stuff I'm really passionate about, and I really want to take in the constructive feedback along with the complimentary feedback, I guess. So yeah.
Cool. I'm glad. I feel good about this. I was reading some comments online about maybe other communication and people endorsing that communication. Okay. And feeling obviously skeptical. Yeah. I'll be honest, I do feel cautiously optimistic, but still skeptical. I can't help it. I mean, that's the world we live in.
Oh, for sure.
It's gotten me to where I am today, and I feel like I'm okay. So a little bit of critical thinking is always welcome.
I mean, like I said earlier, there's probably nothing that I could say in this conversation to you who, we've known each other for many, many years now, but especially to folks that are tuning in that I've never met personally, that would fully remove any type of skepticism that they might have. But I just, at least wanted the opportunity to chat with you and share what my view of this is. And it's in my best interest to make this game as amazing as possible and grow this player base as much as I can. And I don't just mean that in terms of, for my career. I mean that as someone who genuinely, like, Pokemon Go has become a big part of my life. And it's more than just a job for me. It's my passion. I spend way too many hours, playing this game. I'm already trying to teach my 2-year-old how to, throw a Pokeball, and he freaking loves it. But yeah, myself, Ed, the rest of the Pokemon Go team, especially the folks who have been privileged, like myself, to have met Scopely leadership and whatnot over the past several months, we would not be making this decision if we felt that it in any way jeopardized this game, this lifestyle that we've spent the bulk of our careers building. That is way more important to us than any type of, financial outcome or anything like that. And yeah, of course, good to be healthily skeptic about anything, but I genuinely think that, this is a great thing for Pokemon Go. And I'm excited. I'm very optimistic for the next several years. And, if you or anyone else ends up hating it, you can come straight to me and say, Michael, what the F are you doing? And, I'll take accountability for that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty stoked.
I mean, if I end up hating it, I'll probably just quietly disappear into whatever other channels.
I don't want that either, So,
but I mean, I think that's probably my final piece to everyone is like, things are changing, things are staying the same, things are trying to stay the same. Wait and see. You don't have to overreact now. Obviously, if anything happens that you end up hating, at any point, if the game becomes stressful or unfun to you, I've said this for years. Sorry, Michael. I'm sure you would agree, though.
I do.
If at any point you don't enjoy it, it's okay to take a break, step away, quit completely.
Yeah.
This is at the end of the day a luxury hobby that we all have the privilege of enjoying. So if it becomes too much, whether that's for any reason, put it down, take a break. But I appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate you as well. I know you just got in from a big international trip, so hopefully you can get a little nap after this.
Great segue. I'll be editing that video soon, and you can watch it hopefully within the next week or two here on the channel.
Awesome.
Thanks for the plug.
Yeah.
Last question. Who leaked the news?
I wish I knew. But it's one of those things where, in hindsight, I actually think it was weirdly a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about from like a player perspective or anything, but even internally, I think it helped folks process this before our official announcement, and so it wasn't super surprising or anything to my coworkers who officially found out just this last week. So yeah, whoever leaked it, I guess in a weird way, I owe you thanks. I was very annoyed when it happened because it was also right before Go Tour and it was a big distraction. But I think all's well that ends well. So
I didn't expect you to answer that.